Hi, I'm Manda McKay. I'm a professional artist and I'm making these creativity videos to give you tips to help enhance your creativity regardless of your level of expertise. For this tip, I'm going to talk about just doing a halfway version of something. I think that for a lot of us, just the wanting to do something perfectly and then the fear of failure essentially can get in the way with us even getting started on a project, especially if you're just new at this and you're just starting out. So I want to talk about that today and how doing just a low effort, sort of halfway version where you know that the outcome isn't going to be that great, that can really help you get better and practice with your creative hobby or your art. So I will give you an example of how this worked out pretty well for me. When I was in my 20s, I mostly was painting pet portraits for people, and I was using colored pencil, and then I would airbrush watercolor on top of the colored pencil. But I wanted to get back into oil painting. I had taken one oil painting class in college, and I made a B in that class, so obviously I was just slightly above mediocre at it. But I wanted to see if I could get back into oil painting. But money was really tight at this time. The pet portraits were my main source of income, actually. So if you can imagine, it was going to be hard for me to go out and buy a bunch of supplies for oil painting when I wasn't sure if I was even going to be any good at it, since I really wasn't good at it before in college. But I wanted to give it a try. So I decided that I was just going to do just a halfway low effort version just to kind of see. And when I say low effort, I mean I had like a light colored piece of wood instead of having a canvas, and I actually had some kind of vegetable oil that I had in my kitchen that I was using to mix with the oil paints that I still had left over from college. So I did a painting just as a test, and I knew it wasn't going to turn out really well just because of the supplies I was using, if nothing else. But it was just a low effort version just to get me started and just to see whether it was going to work or not, and whether I thought I could actually be good at oil painting if I really tried. So I did this really just halfway low effort version, and it wasn't that great. It wasn't. But I could see that I remembered what I had learned in college, and I could see that maybe if I kept going and made an effort at this, that I would be able to get better at it. And so that's what I did. But if I'd had to motivate myself to go out and just buy a canvas and a bunch of paints and just all the expensive supplies and brushes, instead of just using what I had around the house, I probably wouldn't have ever gotten started on it. I would have been just too worried that it wasn't going to turn out well and that I was going to invest all this money and I would be taking a chance on something that probably wasn't going to pay off. So, so just doing a low effort version just to kind of see was the first step for me. And then I was able to make more effort and then really put some practice into it. And so I feel like I've gotten pretty good at oil painting by this point in my life. Now, another example of me doing something really halfway is with these videos about the creativity tips that I'm doing. This is something new to me. I guess I think this is my 44th video, but I started earlier this year, so about 9 months ago. So then this was just something I had no experience with, but I really wanted to be sharing my creativity tips with people, and I didn't really, since I'm not a teacher or anything, I didn't really have another way to reasonably get this across, so I thought YouTube videos was the best way. But I did a test video. I did a test video in my house, and I actually set up some lights, and I put on makeup and fixed my hair up. I even tried to do like a lot of other like female content creators, and I did false eyelashes, and that just did not work. It looked like I'd been beaten up by spiders. But anyway, like I made an effort, I thought, and I did a test video, and it was terrible. It was terrible to the point that I didn't try again for months. But I still really had this desire to share these tips with people. So I decided I was just going to do these like just really halfway low effort versions just so that so that my expectations wouldn't be too high and that I could practice. And if it didn't turn out well, I could just tell myself, well, you just weren't trying that hard. And instead of thinking that like, oh, you're just not good at this. So one thing you can probably tell these videos aren't scripted. I'm just ad-libbing about a particular topic. So first I just tried talking to myself in a mirror. It was as easy as that, just to kind of get more comfortable with ad-libbing something instead of having to memorize a script. And when I felt like I was comfortable enough with that, then the next step, which was still really low effort, was to just use the camera on my laptop, which was not very good quality and definitely not flattering, but just to kind of, in the morning, like at breakfast time, I would just shoot like a 1 or 2 minutes of just talking into the camera. And I knew it was gonna be pretty terrible, and it was, but it did help me practice. And it did help me see a few things that I could do to improve. So then finally I was ready to actually try shooting videos again. And I had given up on having a more high production value, let's say. To me, the important thing was getting the message across. And instead of trying to set up lighting, I just went out into the woods and I just was holding the camera on a little tiny tripod. And that's what I'm doing now. And I just talked into the camera. And it isn't, you know, it isn't really high production value, that's for sure. I think you can tell that I'm just talking off the top of my head, holding this camera. But the important thing for me was to get the message across. And because I had already done these really low effort, not a lot invested in them basically versions, I felt comfortable enough to come out here and actually give it a shot for real. And in case you're wondering, I'm actually not striving for perfection here in the first place. I just want to get the message across and have the video not look too terrible, like that first one that I did, and just try to talk, and hopefully the message is coming across and these videos are still useful. And that was the goal, not to have it look like this perfect, you know, high production value, like I spent a lot of money on it and hired a crew or something. So tell me what you think. Well, first of all, do you think I should be putting a lot more effort into these, or just coming and talking, you know, just talking to the camera like I'm talking to you one-to-one? And have you tried doing one of these halfway low effort versions of something just to kind of get over your fear of failure, and not expecting it to be terrific and like you want it, since often it's hard to have your art project or your creative project come out exactly like you had hoped it would. Let me know what you think. Let me know in the comments. I hope you found this video to be useful in spite of its low production value. And again, my name is Manda McKay, and thank you so much for watching.